We're here in Yalapa, Jalisco, hiking the Tuito River. We're looking for small caimans. These are the little crocodiles that run around the rivers here in the great state of Jalisco.
Whoa! What was that?
But it's not the little crocodiles in the rivers of Jalisco that we're going to talk about today, but the crocodiles who drive around San Carlos and sell real estate. So, today is part 2, south of the border, land of disorder. Now, in part 1 of South of the Border, Land of Disorder, we showed you how Richard Baca used the Ministerio Público to falsely accuse John Papel of stealing a television set from a rental home to extort money from him. This week, in part 2, let's take it a step further and show you how Javier Ordaz and his sister Catalina Ordaz have used the corrupt judicial system in Guaymas to go from more than a 5,000 peso TV set to something more like a $70,000 lot on the Caracol Peninsula. And for that we go back to Kimberly and Susan's case. So let's refresh ourselves on what this case was supposed to be about.
We are at this courthouse because Javier Ordaz Aguiar has accused Kimberly and I of beating him up.
Breaking down his door first.
Breaking down his door, entering his house and beating him and threatening him and his family. On September 11th, I discovered a construction shack being built on a lot on the Caracol, and it was next to my lot. And I realized that the construction material trucks were coming through my lot onto that. And the family had named Kimberly as the Abasea as the power of attorney for the property. Executor of the property. So I called Kimberly and said, hey, are you building on the property? And she says, I'm not aware of anything happening with the property. We decided at that point if I built a fence on the back of my property, since it's on a steep incline, the trucks and the construction material would no longer be able to pass through and start building on that lot. So we made a decision to put up a fence to protect the lot in question. So with 4 workers and a, how do you call the fence?
Cyclone fence.
A cyclone fence, we went up there to build a fence.
To block the dumpers.
To block the trucks. We discovered a chicken wire fence on the other lot, and we took that down and started building. And about that time, a man came screaming out of this house and yelling and threatening to throw us in jail, that he's watching the property, that he has rights to the property, and that we're stealing his fence, and it goes on because he's just more and more agitated, and then he's going to call the police, and it was just him. So then he did call the police, and the police showed up.
And there's a video with that, isn't there?
Right, and there's 2 YouTube, look up Javier Ordaz videos out there of him yelling and screaming at the police.
When the police asked him who owned the property, because he goes, I'm watching this for my friend, I have every right here. And they said, well, what's your friend's name?
And he said he didn't know who the person
and
was.
he just kind of looked into space like, well, who is he? Well.
So what is this really about? Well, what it's really about is the house on lot 472, right next to this lot, number 473, on the Caracol Peninsula. You see, Javier Ordaz was at the time living in this house, which his sister built on this lot. The only problem was that Catalina Ordaz built a house on a lot she didn't own. She knew that the owners of lot 472 had passed away, and she assumed there were no heirs to the property, or if there were legal heirs, she could beat them in court and steal the property for herself. She thought wrong. Enter Susan Kennelly. Susan had actually purchased the house from the heirs to the property. This, of course, pissed off Catalina Ordaz to no end. Thus, the charges against Susan Kennelly and Kimberly now make more sense, don't they? That's what this was all about in the first place. Land fraud. It's been going on in San Carlos for a long time. Now, back to the bullshit charges. This case should have never gone as far up the judicial system as it did, and this entire file should have been chucked into a dung heap and thrown out of court immediately. For several reasons, it was most certainly not. And we're going to talk about those reasons in depth in the hope that anyone watching this video will learn from the mistakes of Sue and Kim, who I will add had been gracious enough to share their experiences with me so I could produce this expose and hopefully protect others from the kind of crap that's been going on in San Carlos for so many years. Reason numero uno that this was not immediately thrown out of court? A shitty attorney for the defense was hired.
And we called our attorney who was working on the probate for the lot, and his name was Librado Navarro.
At the very beginning of this, Kim and Sue had an attorney who basically told them everything was okay, that this would be thrown out of court quickly and never be moved to the penal system. It would remain a civil matter, and then the charges would be dismissed. That first attorney, Librado Navarro, was oh so wrong. Navarro, over the phone, told me many times I could interview him about the matter. I was told to meet him at his beautifully decorated office on 3 different occasions. In the end, he refused to speak on camera. Why? Who knows? But I will show that Librado Navarro and all the other lawyers Susan hired, with the exception of the last lawyer, the very professional Pedro Garcias Palazuelos, were completely incompetent. Not only was Kim and Sue's case moved to the penal courts, the Ministerio Público was insisting that they go to prison and be found guilty. His final summation actually scared Susan so much, she decided to hire a new lawyer close to the end of the case, but well after more evidence could be entered on her behalf. Their last lawyer, Pedro Garcias Palazuelos, definitely helped save them, and had no problem whatsoever talking about the case on camera. A very fresh breath of air, since in Guaymas everybody loves to keep their mouths shut, especially regarding the Ordazes. Now, in order to show how corrupt the whole Guaymas judicial system is, starting with the judge, the Ministerio Público, and ending with the incompetence of Susan and Kim's first lawyers, we need simply to look at the witnesses for both sides. Now remember, the judge, based on the testimony of these witnesses, moved the case onto the penal system and did not immediately throw the case out of court. It was easy to find Kim and Sue's witnesses, since they actually showed up at court.
Well, I received a summons to come to court. This is my 4th time here, and I suspect nothing will happen again. Apparently the other party to this lawsuit that we're just witnesses in will not come to court. And so we come here and we sit, and then we leave, and then we get summons and we come back. That's why I'm here.
Would you say is the situation is essentially that somebody got caught doing something they weren't supposed to do? They weren't happy about that. The fact that they got caught by somebody who's a competitor with them makes it even worse. And the fact that that person's a woman, foreigner competitor, makes them go kind of like crazy?
Well, I think that's part of it, absolutely. But I also think that one of the main things for this one event, this one thing, was just a problem of a woman, Catalina, stealing a lot, starting to build a home. The owners tried to stop it. They put tape up. Catalina would go and rip the tape down, and I witnessed that too. I lived there, so I saw this going on. And she would keep building. They'd get it stopped again. They'd block it all off. And if Catalina's not supposed to be there, she'd come and she'd rip it down again and build again. So she built this house and then rented it out, and then she got her brother living in it, and then she proceeded to try to steal the lot next door, which is the one that Kimberly had the power of attorney on. So it's just, and so she decided she better go put her fence up. And that's what started the whole thing. She was up there with her workers from Santa Clara to put up a wall. So it's blatant lying. It's just stealing.
I went to court on many occasions hoping that the witnesses for Javier Ordaz would show up so I could speak with them. And in these cases, when they don't show up voluntarily after a certain number of times, the police are ordered to bring them to court. That, for some reason, never happened. The police never brought the witnesses for Ordaz to court. So Ines and I decided we would go find them ourselves, since the witnesses for the defense, Gary and Debbie Wild, see one of the witnesses for Javier Ordaz every day by their home. He works at Costa Bella and was at the time employed by Javier Ordaz. On our first visit to Costa Bella looking for Sergio Manuel Ruiz, Ordaz's star witness, we found him right at the entrance gate, having lunch where he works. So my obvious question is, if Ines and I can find Sergio on our first try, why couldn't the police find him and bring him into court to testify in front of the judge? And here's the important point. Sergio's original statement supposedly was given at the offices of the Ministerio Público. When a person testifies to the Ministerio Público, they have to go to the office of the Ministerio Público and swear on a Bible to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Here is what Sergio told us.
Una pregunta muy importante que yo tengo la duda. ¿Tú declaraste ante el Ministerio Público o fuiste a alguna oficina o al licenciado del ingeniero?
No, yo no he ido a ninguna oficina.
Tú nunca asististe a ninguna oficina.
No.
¿Pero diste un testimonio o no diste nunca testimonio?
Eso que me están preguntando
Ajá. ¿A
ustedes,
quién se lo diste el testimonio?
Pues no sé si, no recuerdo, eran unas personas así como ustedes que llegaron.
¿Vinieron aquí?
No, allá,
¿Pero dónde?
en su casa.
En su casa. Ujú. Ok. Ahí ahí dice tu declaración.
Sí, porque...
¿Y firmaste algo?
Ah, no, yo no firmé nada.
That's right. Sergio told us he never went to the office of the Ministerio Público and he never signed any statement as a witness. What that means is that essentially he did not put his hand in a Bible and he certainly did not tell the truth. What he did do, though, is what his employer told him to do. He was told by his boss, Javier Ordaz, to lie. And as long as he didn't have to go to the Ministerio Público's office or the courthouse, what was the harm in doing what your employer has asked, or perhaps more accurately, demanded of you? Sergio even admitted he did what he was told to do in this statement.
Sí, pues, entonces de hecho yo muchas veces, sabes que yo no quiero problemas, los problemas son tuyos y nosotros somos trabajadores como, por ejemplo, vaya, que ustedes sean mi patrón y que me digan, Sergio, llévate ese garrafón para el carro. ¿Yo qué voy a hacer? Yo lo voy a agarrar y me lo voy a llevar. Yo no sé si será robado o no, pues, o sea, oye, pero que...
Sigues las órdenes del patrón hasta cierto punto.
No, pues es que yo no sabía, como él me dijo, pues yo me lo llevé. Sí.
Now I have to admit that I knew in advance that Sergio had not gone to the Ministerio Público's office. How did I know? Back to reason numero uno on why you hire a good lawyer. Pedro Garcia Palazuelos, after his first reading of the case file, noticed immediately that Sergio Manuel Ruiz's one and only statement in this case was not signed by the Ministerio Público. I asked Pedro what that meant.
Porque dentro de la averiguación previa que se practicó por el Ministerio Público y que es la que da nacimiento al proceso, en esa averiguación previa se cometió una violación que no es reparable. Las personas que comparecieron como testigos, que llevó el que se dice ofendido, o sea, Francisco Javier Ordaz. Francisco Javier lleva a 3 testigos al Ministerio Público a declarar, porque él dice que esos son a las 3 personas que les consta que él fue amenazado de muerte y que también les consta que fue allanado su domicilio, su hogar. Y esas personas aparece en esa investigación del Ministerio Público que relatan la historia en unas actas, pero esas actas no tienen ninguna firma del Ministerio Público ni de ningún secretario del Ministerio Público.
This case should have been thrown out of court at the very beginning. I have to believe that the judge was corrupted, since the judge themselves should have seen that the witnesses' statements were not signed by the Ministerio Público, which means that the witnesses never made the statement to the Ministerio Público, which means the witnesses were invented and never existed in the first place. So what do you all think of the judicial system in Guaymas now? So that's it for part 2. Part 3 we'll wrap it up and tell you where everyone stands. But as we just showed, it would be impossible for a judge to put these gals in jail based on the testimony of invented witnesses. Thanks for watching this week's video. If you enjoyed this video, go to the website worldsaquarium.com and sign up for the newsletter. I'm Vince. Thanks for watching. Woo! Y con el favor de Dios, we do hope to see you next week.
No, bobo.